Hey everyone, welcome to Family Matters. It's Nicole here, family resource worker with Our Children, Our Future. And today we are going to be talking about how to help your child cope with anxiety. Specifically, we're going to be talking about school anxiety. I know that school has just started up this week, and that if your children are like my children, there's a bit of anxiety, but returning to school pre-COVID, and now there is the added fun of COVID-19. So I am going to be talking about some signs you might see when your child's anxious and just how to help as a parent. I should also mention that if you feel like the anxiety in your child is completely ruling their life, that is changing their behaviors and habits because of this, that you do need to speak to your family physician or to give us a call, and we can help refer you to a family counselor as well for your child or yourself to speak to. It is important to address anxiety as a real thing. It can be very debilitating, and it can happen at any age. So I am going to post a variety of links as well in the description of this video, as well as the numbers you can contact for your local OCOF offices that can help you get referrals if you feel like you need one. So, jumping in, what are some signs and symptoms of anxiety, especially if your child maybe isn't super verbal or they're not very good at expressing their emotions? So things you might want to look for in your child, anywhere from really ages 1 to 6, is things such as crying, whining, bedwetting, thumb sucking, wanting to be held, cuddling, really clingy. They might notice more stomach aches. They might be complaining more about headaches. They might want to be by themselves more often than they are used to. You might catch them just staring off into space and not really paying attention. They might start to develop some eating problems, either eating too much or not eating at all. They might have more increased nightmares. You might notice more problems sleeping. They may have a harder time going to sleep, or they may have a harder time waking up or wanting to sleep more during the day. They might just be more cranky. You might see an increase in tantrums. They might have a bit more attitude, be a bit more stubborn. They might develop new fears, such as fear of the dark, or being more agitated in general. So again, these are just some signs and symptoms that any child could have at any age that could be exhibiting anxiety. So basically, again, these are just kind of an overview of some behaviors you might start to notice or might start up or might get worse if your child is experiencing anxiety and not necessarily knowing what to call it or how to tell you. First things first is do not be alarmed. This is completely normal. It can feel like kind of a shock as a parent, I think, to all of a sudden find your child bedwetting or sucking their thumb again or something like that. But please know that it's completely normal, and it's just your child's way of expressing that they have a need and that they need your help. So some ways to kind of help with that is to pay attention to your child. And we're going to go a little more in depth about school specific, but just in general, pay more attention to your child. Give them some extra love, give them some extra cuddles. If they're really clingy, they need that. They need that reassurance that you're going to be there, you're going to come back, and that they got this. If they can't express how they're feeling, ask them how you feel. You know what's been going on, and maybe they'll be able to tell you that they don't feel right, or that they feel scared, or that they're not sure. Just be there and comfort them. Spend more time with them if you can. Sometimes they just need that extra one-on-one time and that physical contact as well. So when we talk about back to school anxiety, and I got this from anxietycanada.com, they specifically start talking about school, coping with going back to school. Now this is pre-COVID information. COVID adds a whole other aspect of anxiety to going back to school. But I'm going to focus just on going back to school because I think if you can get the going back to school anxiety under control, then the COVID one will also kind of follow suit. And the information that I give you on how to handle back to school worries is going to also translate through to going back to school during a pandemic, I think. um, so, anxious feelings are completely normal leading up to school, um, especially if they're changing schools, they have to go on the bus, maybe they're not riding the bus anymore, if it's their first time going to school, if they're switching teachers. Any of that can be really nervous because it's the unknown. We're always concerned about the unknown. Um, so this is when you might start to see more of those behaviors. Depending on how soon your child realizes they're going back to school, it could be a couple weeks in advance. It might be a couple days before. So, you know, just all I can say is just really listen to them, see those concerns, and sometimes their concerns don't seem like real concerns to us. Like, will my friends be in class with me? Are people gonna like my outfit? What if I don't make any friends? What if someone laughs at me? What if I can't find my classroom? These are real valid fears for them, and as adults we're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But it is for children. Their fears and anxieties are real, and um, we have to understand that. So it's very, very important though that if your child is having anxiety about going back to school, do not stop them, do not keep them home from school because of this anxiety. It is so crucial that you follow through with a plan to get them back to school. All you're doing by keeping them home because of this anxiety is further and feeding into that anxiety. So we're going to talk about a little bit more on how we can do that, okay? So I've got a couple steps. I've got 5 steps here to help you deal with back to school worries. So the very first thing, and this goes for anybody, this goes for adults as well, is take care of the basics. And by this I mean take care of yourself. Be healthy. Eat healthy. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Establish routines. Go to bed at the same time every night, especially with your children. Bedtime's the same time every night. Morning time is the same wake up time. And I even stress that you try and do this on the weekends. Kids, especially if they're younger, under 6, don't always have a concept of what day of the week it is and what day is school, what day is weekend. So by keeping it the same every single day, they have that routine, they have that structure. Make sure that they're eating healthy, fruits, veggies. Make sure that they're getting their protein, some carbs. Try and limit the sugary beverages and the sugary treats, as this can cause the blood sugar to fluctuate and emotions to fluctuate as well. Honestly, once you've had a good night's sleep, it's easier to tackle your problems. When you're not tired, when you're not hungry, when you're not feeling sluggish, it's easier to look at a problem with new eyes and a more positive attitude because you feel ready. So the second thing we're going to do is we're going to provide empathy for our child. And so what it is basically listening. What are they worried about? What do they think is going to happen? Just listen. Don't tell them, oh, that's silly, you're going to be fine. Give them that undivided attention. Sometimes kids will talk and they need that more one-on-one interaction. Sometimes kids are more on the go and they just kind of want to chat about it here and there. So maybe while you're playing a game with them or at the dinner table, kind of thing. It can be a casual conversation. It doesn't have to be super in-depth and emotional and meaningful. Some kids just have a hard time connecting those emotions. So even if it's just done casually, oftentimes for teenagers, and I mean, we don't deal with teenagers technically with OCOF, however, during car rides or going for walks are great times to have those conversations. It's not a direct eye contact, which can be really intimidating, and it just feels easier to have that conversation if you're not staring at somebody directly in the face. I don't know how to explain it other than that, but we just want to provide empathy. We want to listen to them and understand that their feelings are valid. So next, we're going to problem solve. So once we know what's bothering our child, we are going to do a couple things. We are going to develop a plan, a coping plan, and you are going to want to let them try and come up with this on their own. So again, when you're dealing with younger children, sometimes it's hard for them to problem solve, but a 5-year-old, 4-year-old, 6-year-old even, can problem solve fairly well on their own, especially with a bit of guidance. So if, for example, they're worried about not being able to find their classroom, say, well, what would you do if you couldn't find your classroom? What would you do if you were there? Let's pretend we're there right now and you can't find your classroom. What would you do? And they might think about it and they say, well, I might ask a teacher. That's a great solution. That's a really good solution. So now you know that if you can't find your classroom, that you can ask a teacher or even another student. You're allowed to give them suggestions as well, but you want them to be able to think on their own, because especially in the moment, if they're there, they're able to take a moment and think, okay, what would I do in this situation? It's helping them learn to cope with that. And I mean, I try not, especially with kids, I try not to go, well, what's the worst case scenario? As adults, sometimes that's helpful to talk about, like, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? Because really, anything other than that is better. So for anxiety warriors, I have anxiety, and oftentimes it'll go to the worst case scenario. But really, from there, everything's uphill because, I mean, it can't get worse than that, right? So it goes better. However, with kids, it can almost feed into that fear. So we don't necessarily want to give them, well, what's the worst case scenario? What can you do to solve your current fear? Because they may not have thought the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario for them might literally be not being able to find their classroom. And that's the worst thing that could happen to them. And that's okay because there's a solution. So helping them come up with a coping mechanism and problem solving for their own fear is important. And let's focus on the positives of school. So oftentimes anxious children, the first thing when you say about school, school's coming up, whatever, are you excited? No. Who's my teacher going to be? What if I don't have any friends in my class? What am I going to wear? What if I miss the bus? All of these concerns start coming up. And again, they're completely normal, completely natural. But try and focus on some positive aspects of school. So if your child's been in school before, what was your favorite class in school last year? Are you excited to have that class again? Do you think that you'll get to see your best friend so and so? Hopefully you know if they're going back to the school, it'll help ease that transition. But give them some positives to focus on. Maybe you'll get to see that favorite secretary that's always greeting everyone at the front door. Maybe there's a certain aspect about school that they just love. So find what makes them happy about school and focus on that. If it's their first year of school, talk about some happy things that you enjoyed in school. Oh, I really loved gym class because we were able to play games and the gym is so big and we could go outside and we would play. Give them things to look forward to. The last step for this one is to pay attention to your own behavior. So again, we as parents have a lot of anxiety as well. And I think this year, and I'm speaking for myself as well, there's a lot more anxiety with COVID. There's a lot more rules. I think we are all kind of grieving what school used to be for our children and what it looks like now and moving forward. And we're worried about our children, and that's okay. But we also want to make sure that our kids don't necessarily see us spiral down that anxiety hole as well. It's okay for your children to see you be anxious and see how you cope with it. And again, it would be more along the lines of, oh, yeah, mommy's a little worried too about having to wear a mask at work all the time. So I can understand how you'd be anxious about having to wear a mask at school too. But you know what? We're very strong, and I have a solution when I go out. If I need a break, I can go outside. You can go outside at recess and take a break and come up with some strategies together. But try and check your own emotions. And this is important for when you're dropping them off. It's hard sometimes not to be a bawling mess, especially if it's your first child going to school, or even if it's not their first time going to school. You know what? Sometimes we're just emotional about our children going off on their own without us, and that's okay. But your child needs to see that you're strong and that you have confidence in them, because if you are a mess, they're going to be a mess too. So here are some things, and I realize we're already into school, so these aren't always necessarily, this isn't the best time to maybe talk about these. However, I do want to give you some tools because maybe you are still struggling and you can start to implement some of these things to help maybe ease the transition into school a little bit better. So what they're recommending is 1 to 2 weeks before school. Again, return to that schedule. Summertime is a great time. We're up late, there's bonfires, there's, you know, evenings where the sun's out till 10. So we spend a lot of time up later. We sleep in sometimes. We're on vacation. You know, it's a great flex time. However, a couple weeks before school, and you'll know your kids well, if they get into routine pretty quick, you can start this a little bit later. But if they need that time, it's always best to try and get your kids into a sleep routine, especially a week or two before school starts. And again, I stress to try and continue this through the weekends. It kind of sucks as a parent, and I totally get that. However, you will notice a difference. If you are finding like, oh my gosh, I've been letting my kids stay up till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and now they need to be in bed by 8, I wouldn't just automatically say, okay, 8 o'clock, it's bedtime, let's go. I would start by whittling down that time a little bit by 15 minutes to a half hour, and start waking them up at the same time every morning. So chances are, if you're getting them up at 6:30 or 7 every morning, they're going to want to go to bed a little bit later. You may see some behaviors, and that's again completely normal because they've got a lack of sleep. However, eventually they will want to go to bed because they are tired a bit earlier, especially if they're getting up at the time they need to be up for school. For some kids, they want to be involved in making their school lunches. So together, sit down and write out some lunch ideas, some possible lunch ideas. Lunches can get boring real quick, especially because there are so many restrictions on what can be brought to school in terms of allergens. So make sure you know what your school allows and what doesn't allow, and try and brainstorm some different ideas that you know that they're gonna like, and maybe some treat ideas that they might be able to have that first day or week as well. Again, if you feel comfortable bringing them the grocery store shopping, sorry, that's always a great idea as well. They can be involved in part of the process. If not, that is okay. Have them help with the list and just sit down and talk about it. This also goes for school supplies. In my house, we don't do the new school supplies every year. I'm a firm believer in recycle and reuse, and so if the backpack is fine, if the lunch pail is in good condition, we reuse what we have. But oftentimes we will try and find one new thing to add to that, whether it be a pencil case, a pair of new shoes, which, let's be honest, they always need new shoes, or a new shirt, just to kind of give them something exciting to look forward to. Again, creating that list of what they might need together, or going shopping together if you feel comfortable. If it's possible, and I realize we're already kind of into school at this point, but they do recommend, if possible, to visit the schoolyard, to drive by the school, maybe walk the route to school that they would be walking if they're in town. Find them a walking buddy if that's something that they need, and just to get them feeling more comfortable about where they need to go, and that they know the route back to and from school, and they know which school is theirs. I know here in Espanola we have 3 different schools, and previously the buses would pick up everybody in town and stop at all 3 schools, and there have been instances where the child has gotten off at the wrong school. I mean, obviously it's been caught and corrected very quickly, and everyone was fine. However, having your child know which school they need to go to is quite important. Get them involved in packing up their backpack or their lunch pail the night before or the morning of. Again, it makes them feel included. It's something to look forward to, and it gives them just that bit of a positive note about school. On their first day of school, be sure to get up in lots of time so that they're not rushing. When you're rushed, it can feel extra stressful. So get up with enough time that they're not rushing around and that you're trying to get out the door to catch the bus or that you're going to be late for work yourself. However, don't get them up so early that they're waiting around. It's kind of that bit of a flex time. You don't want to wake them up at 5 if they're not leaving till 8, because it probably is not going to take them 3 hours to get ready. However, you don't want to get them up at 7:30 if they're leaving at 8 and they need to, get everything all together. You know your household. Do the best you can there. Make sure that they have breakfast. Some kids are not breakfast kids, and I totally get that. But even making a quick smoothie, a piece of fruit, something in their belly is going to help with those butterflies as well, that nervous energy. It doesn't have to be a big breakfast, just something in their belly, a piece of toast, just something. If you want, you can do something a bit bigger to make it more exciting for the first day of school. Teachers are your friends. Teachers are amazing, especially during this pandemic. I salute all of those teachers out there. You are doing fantastic. Thank you so much for doing what you do and taking things on in such an amazing role. But when it comes to anxiety in your children, teachers are amazing. They deal with this every year, and they are pros at it. I mean, they understand children have really strong feelings, and they're the ones who see them day in and day out. So use your teachers. If you're noticing your child's having a really hard time, maybe contact the teacher and work out a plan and say, my child's having a really hard time separating from me. Can you help me come up with a plan to help ease this transition into school? They are the pros at this, so they are definitely going to be an asset in this. Make sure that you praise your child for their brave behavior. When they get off the bus or when they get home from that first day of school, I'm so proud of you. You did such a great job today. You got on that bus. You were so brave. Make sure that they know that you see the effort that went into that. And make sure that you talk about that first day of school. I know some kids are like, oh, it was good, it was fine, whatever. Ask them, what was your favorite part of the day? Who did you talk to today? Did you make any new friends today? What were their names? What was your favorite subject today? Did you guys do this? Did you ask them questions that are not just yes and no answers? It's more likely to get a longer response, and that you might be able to add on more questions. So that's kind of like the back to school handling anxiety. So there are a couple more tips that I do have about anxiety in general. So I will go over those really quick because we're already 24 minutes-ish in. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think that these will also help and with the back to school anxiety, as well as maybe some COVID anxiety as well, or just generalized anxiety. So when we're talking about anxiety, and this could be for anybody, adults, teenagers, children, when we talk about anxiety, the goal is not to eliminate the anxiety. It's to help manage it. So if you ever had anxiety, it's not just a feeling of nervousness. Anxiety does a lot of things to the body. For some people, they feel nauseous. They have physical symptoms that result from anxiety. We talked about children before getting stomach aches, headaches. If you have enough anxiety and stress in your life, you can develop ulcers, high blood pressure, and things like that. It can do crazy things to your body. So when people are like, oh, just get over it, it's not as simple as changing our mindset. We also need to try and adjust our mindset to cope with it and also help our body cope with it as well. So again, the best thing that we can do is not remove the stressor. So if our child is nervous about going to school, we don't want to be like, okay, well, you don't have to go to school, you can stay home. All that is doing is perpetuating that fear. It's going to continue to make it this big, monstrous fear that they're always worried about. The idea is that if we slowly introduce the stressor, or we slowly introduce what's causing that anxiety, is that over time, as they see that, hey, I went to school, nothing bad happened, everything turned out okay, and I feel okay about it. The next time they go, it's going to be like, okay, yesterday nothing bad happened, everything seemed okay. Today I'm starting at a bit of a higher level, we're doing okay, and the next day it's going to be even better, and so on and so forth. The idea is that you're going to just kind of wear down those fears. But again, you're never really getting rid of the anxiety. It's always still there. It's just being able to manage it. And again, once you manage the thoughts of it, the anxiety of the physical part will come down as well. Express positive but realistic expectations. So you can't promise a child that that's not going to happen. You can't promise a child that they're not going to get lost on the first day of school. That's not realistic. You can't promise a child that getting a needle is not going to hurt, because it could, right? What you do want to express is that they're going to be okay, and that you're going to help them get through it, and that their teachers are going to help them get through it. That they are brave, and that you have confidence in them that they can manage this, and that you've worked out solutions to help overcome those problems. So it's, again, give them that confidence, like, you've got this. We talked about what you could do if this happened. I have faith, you got this. But you can even practice role playing. Kids actually don't mind role playing. Adults, it feels kind of weird, but for kids, it can help solidify that confidence. And that, no, you might get lost, and you know what, that's okay, because if you do, we've talked about, you could ask your teacher, or you could ask a teacher to help you find your classroom. And I know you could do that, and you are going to have a great day, and your teachers are going to help, and I'm going to be here when you get back. Help boost that confidence, give them that positivity. So again, respecting their feelings. This is so important. You can't just fluff off how they're feeling. And I see this a lot when we talk about bedtime fears. And I'm not going to go into bedtime fears because that's a whole other thing. However, when they say there's a monster in my room, and they're honestly scared for it, how you can't just tell them, oh, there's no monsters, just go back to sleep, you're fine. That's just fluffing off their feelings. To them, this is very real. They're very scared. There is something wrong. So it's important to listen, and it's important to understand that this is real to them. Doesn't mean that you have to agree with them, but you also don't want to amplify them. So be empathetic, be listening, help them understand, what exactly are you scared of? Are you scared because it's dark and you can't see in parts of the room? Maybe we could add a nightlight. Are you scared because the nightlight's giving off shadows? Maybe we could shut the door or turn off the nightlight so it's darker in here and there won't be any shadows. Or maybe it's leaving the door open until you fall asleep so that it's a bit brighter in your room. There's a lot of solutions around this. And just letting them know, again, reassuring them, I understand that you're scared, but you're going to be okay. I'm just in the other room, and I'm going to help you get through this, or I can sit with you for a few minutes until you feel comfortable. We'll come up with solutions together, right? And again, I'm not going to go super into the bedtime one, but it works for a lot of different anxieties. You need to understand that the feelings are real to them. Something that's also important is not to ask leading questions. And when I say leading questions, I mean you don't want to ask, are you worried about your bus ride? Are you worried about not finding your classroom? Instead of asking those specific questions that are kind of like, well, I wasn't, but now I am, you want to ask, how are you feeling about starting school next week? What are some worries you might have about starting school next week? And that kind of leaves it open. Then their own thoughts and feelings come through. If you say, "Are you worried about riding the bus?" They might not have been. But now that you're talking about it, they're like, "Oh, wait, maybe I should be nervous about riding the bus because maybe I don't know where to sit. What if nobody wants to sit with me? What if I do something wrong and the bus driver yells at me? Or what happened? So then they start formulating all of these new anxieties. So try not to ask those leading questions. It can be a bit of a challenge if it's something that's new to you, but try and keep the question a little more broad, and then it'll allow them to formulate their own thoughts. This one is kind of tricky because it's kind of a double-edged sword. So this one is try to keep the anticipatory, so like that time period beforehand, short. This is great for certain things, like if you're going to the dentist, your child has a fear of the dentist, or you're going to the doctor, or you're doing something that gives them anxiety, but they can overcome. School, it can be a little bit trickier when you say, "Hey, you're going to school tonight or today. Congratulations, here, get dressed." It may not give them enough time to fully process. But again, you know your children best. If that's what works for you, then that's what works for you. Again, the idea of not giving them a lot of time to think about it is because you're not giving them a lot of time to think about it. And you're not giving them a lot of time to formulate a lot of anxieties, a lot of fears, a lot of worries about it. If your child already has preconceived anxiety about doing certain things, keeping that time short, saying, "Hey, we're going to be headed to the doctor's, or get your shoes on when we're going to hop in the car," and they say we're going, "Oh, we're headed to the doctor's today. Come on, let's go. We got to get in the car." Kind of keeping that short, and they won't have as much time to be anxious about it. They still might be, and say, "You know what? It's okay. I'm right here with you. We got this. We can do this." Again, it gives them less time to think about all of the other things they could be worried about. So, and the ones we kind of talked about, thinking about things through with your child, some different solutions, role play it out if you want, and model your own anxiety. Again, try not to spiral with your anxiety if you can avoid it in front of your children, because it can cause them more anxiety. But watching you cope with your own worries or fears can help them grow confidence in saying, "Hey, mom was able to do that, or dad was able to do that. I think I could do that too." So those are kind of my a bit of general coping and a bit of more focus for school coping. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us through Facebook or call one of the numbers that I've listed in the description below for your local OCOF office. Please check out the links as well. There's a lot of great information in there. There are Canadian websites and organizational websites. Health Canada, Public Health have great resources as well on generalized anxiety. Again, if you are concerned about your child's level of anxiety and that it's debilitating and causing issues in their everyday life, this is something that you really do need to talk to somebody about. And you can talk to your family physician about this, or you can talk to OCOF staff. We can refer you to your local counseling area, or if you wanted to look that up yourself. Definitely, though, you're going to need help. It's not something that just goes away on its own. So if it is something that you're finding is ruling their life or causing some major issues, you do want to talk to someone and have them talk to someone. And there are specialists out there that deal with children with anxiety. So thanks everybody for joining me for Family Matters. I hope some of these tips will help you this week with the back to school. And I hope everyone is doing well, and take care of yourselves, and we will see you next week.